welcome to this panel. As your MC here, I'll try to make it entertaining by not asking softball questions, actually asking questions that are a bit provocative. So just get ready to the apologies in advance to all the panelists. I'm David Post. I run the advisory firm Helix and also a co-founder of W3.io, which is a smart contract orchestration layer. Used to run investments at Chainlink. As our first question, let's just go down the line here. Who you are, what you're working on, I think that's a good start.
Well, hello everyone. I'm Lucas. I'm part of the founding team and head up the ecosystem of Nillion. So my responsibility is to source projects, secure projects, to support projects building on our ecosystem. And what is Nillion? Nillion is a blind computation network, which is really a paradigm shift in how we think about computation. Today, when we talk about privacy, we usually refer to privacy at rest. So when we store data encrypted, we refer to privacy when you transfer data. But whenever you're processing information today, there's actually no privacy protection. So the data always has to get decrypted and processed. And there is obviously attack vectors from a privacy and security perspective that are concerning. Now, blind computation changes that because it fundamentally enables private computation by enabling a user to encrypt data locally on the device, to send that data to a decentralized network of nodes. They can then process that information or store that information in a fully privacy-specific manner. So the nodes see nothing about the underlying information and can nonetheless run computations on that data, which essentially gives rise to that private cloud environment and really fundamentally expands the design space for what's possible with decentralized infrastructure as a whole. The big vision of that really is to fundamentally decentralize trust for high-value, sensitive personal information, the same way as, let's say, Bitcoin has decentralized trust for financial transactions or for monetary assets, Ethereum and the following blockchains, obviously for programmability more broadly. And the Nillion Network's aim is to decentralize trust for the next big category, which is sensitive data. It's private data, it's personal information, which we need to eliminate trust for in terms of storing that data and at the same time processing that information. So essentially infrastructure that could add a significant amount of value whenever apps on-chain, but also in Web2 space require a level of privacy from a storage or compute perspective.
I'm Matt. I run the tech side at Solana Foundation. So Solana is a layer 1 blockchain. The main vision is syncing the world state as fast as the speed of light will allow. So the previous talk was about L2s and their single sequencer. And the idea with Solana is have a globally distributed set of nodes where somebody in South Korea, South Africa, Brussels, wherever has pretty much the same information symmetry, and that makes it so if you did a marketplace like a NASDAQ, it wouldn't just be in New York, and everybody wouldn't have to move to New York or close by. You can live wherever you want, and you can have information and markets be cleared and have something that's basically only allowable on a decentralized system. And Solana also is very permissionless, so anybody can operate a business on that network. And so my role is essentially to look at all the tech that is required to make that come true. And you're seeing it obviously very active, and people are really the users don't necessarily care about the exact vision I just told you. They just really care about I go on and I have all these fun things to do. I can trade coins. I can buy my cell phone service. I can play a game, whatever it might be. So I facilitate all the tech across that entire stack.
So I'm Dirk from Kutis. So I'm the CM of Kutis. What we're building actually a hardware on Solana, a wellness hardware. So so the first product is the Kutis ring. So we are building a ring. It acts like a wellness tracker. So it tracks your biometric data. We encrypt them, we upload them on chain, but more importantly, we also have an app where we integrated AI wellness coach inside. We integrated some gamification stuff just to incentivize data sharing, incentivize wellness behaviors in general. And in the long run, we're trying to actually be the wellness data layer for other wellness app developers, for insurance companies, and etc.
Why is a decentralized approach to confidentiality better than centralized alternatives?
I think the core thing that blockchain does is makes it so we can have ownership over digital things. So everything else that I know of in the entire world is basically brokered by Google, Facebook, whatever your brokerage firm is for your stocks. You don't own actually like a single digital thing outside of blockchain. Blockchain gives you direct ownership. I own my keys. I can do whatever I want with it. There may be some abstraction layers, but generally that's the only way that I can actually own some digital thing. And that includes your digital information. So if you own it, and especially if you start having tools that you can govern the rights of the privacy of it, I can choose exactly what to expose and what not to expose. And again, the user doesn't necessarily need to know all the technical underpinnings of why that is. They just know that I can actually get paid if I give this company access to my data, and I know I am not giving access to any other company. That is a very powerful thing that you just fundamentally don't have with.
How many people actually care about this, though?
I think people really care about privacy.
I mean, hands up. How many people actually care about having their information, self-sovereign information, versus having somebody else own it?
Why do you think so many people have left Facebook over the last 10 years?
Well, I'm just this is I told you this is going to be a good panel here. It's going to be this is not going to be a softball
I'm being
panel.
Spicy.
I like it, man. This has started spicy faster than I thought it would. I'm doing my job. I think that's the question here. Why do I'm obviously here for a reason, the same reasons you are, but it's important to articulate why do these things matter? Why is this a substantially better way of doing it?
Yeah, maybe just to address the first question, and we'll address the privacy, but direct privacy question. So, I mean, if you look back at 2009, right, why did blockchain start in the first place? They started in the first place because we wanted to create a new universe that thinks about self-sovereign data ownership, or in that case, financial ownership, permissionless composability in a very different way to the way we're used in traditional Web 2 services, right? That's how Bitcoin started, one of the disintermediate trusted actors to create a more trustless, permissionless, global, composable system. And obviously with programmable chains, then following in 2014, 2015, Ethereum taking the start, we've just expanded that universe of what's possible with trustless systems. But now the question is, we can do that for public data, we can do that for non-sensitive data. How can we make the next step to also have sensitive data falling under the same universe of trustless, composable networks that essentially don't have to rely on a single point of failure? Why does that matter? It matters today even more than ever before, because we live in an age of an intelligence explosion. We live in an age where we are about to create our personal agents, our personal co-processors, our personalized AI agents. And to create those systems and to run those systems, we will need to feed those systems with a tremendous amount of high-value, sensitive personal information, right? When do I wake up? How do I sleep? When do I do sports? How do I eat? How do I speak, right? My messages with my relatives and my friends. That's a level of sensitivity that we have never seen before in the history of humanity. And I think we have to make sure that we create systems such that that data doesn't end up with one company, doesn't end up with one individual, because that would be a concentration of power that I think would be very scary and would be a very dystopian future to live in. That obviously is the AI umbrella. There are many, many other angles. It enables you now to become a self-sovereign owner of the data, which is something that obviously is not really the case in centralized systems. Centralized systems claim to protect your data, but then in the past have often misused your data, have shared your data, exploited your data. And the only way we can actually get to a different system is if we create a decentralized trustless system where you don't have a single point of failure, where you have the true control of the data, where you can monetize the data, democratize access to the capital that can be earned with it, and you have true privacy protection. And I don't think that is achievable if you don't build a decentralized permission system.
All right, let me continue to push this a little bit. I think this is good answers. The identity landscape in web. Oh, you want to answer that one? Yeah, okay, sure, go. Yeah, I can. Yeah.
So no, I just want to add a little bit more on the consumer side, because the space we are working with is wellness data or personalized data. They're very sensitive, but on the other side, they're very valuable. So for example, if you're trying to feed your wellness data into an AI model, like an AI wellness coach model, if you ask the AI model for some precise, for some customized advice, you would have to enter a lot more sensitive data about your daily routines, about your body biometrics, in order for that to happen. So I think, and these type of if there's a central company that controls these type of data, it's actually they might be selling out your data to third-party providers without letting you know about them. And so I think Strava was actually have had a case against it because it's releasing the user's information to third-party providers. So that's why I think doing the decentralized way, users are able to authorize if not, and then also monetize through their through other people using their data. That could be like the approach in the future.
So the Web3, in the last 6 or 7 years I've been in this space, like identity is the toughest thing to solve within Web3, in my opinion. So, basically the premise I heard the three of you saying is it's a better way because people own their own data. But in order to get to that, you have to come up with some type of an identity standard. Well, what's the way by which people will enter this decentralized, privacy-preserving data schema at scale? Like, how will it happen? Because it doesn't really matter if we have 1,000 lives. You have to get the millions and billions of lives. So how will that process happen? Some easy questions.
I don't think it
right?
will necessarily be the fear of the negative case that will get people going. If you look at, I guess, a good signal, something like Twitter or YouTube, where the content creator, the millions of them who are just self-motivated individuals, entrepreneurs, are now competing with New York Times, whatever, insert your former, how many newspapers are in business nowadays? And that is because if you just, these are centralized platforms in a sense, but the information dissemination is done very distributed. And so all we're basically talking about when we're saying decentralization, blah, 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 like all these like buzzwords, is this concept just applied to more sensitive data than just me choosing to upload a YouTube video. This is a way for that same concept where individual creators of my own health data to give access to some other entity. So and then you also have the other side now, which is the application developers who are giving me some sort of value from that. So instead of Google Maps having 50 PMs that describe how do we do entirety of our movement data in the world, maybe plus Strava, that's a small amount of people, and they own so much of our world's movement data. Now, if that was opened up a little bit and just allowed access to any entrepreneur to build on top of that, I would argue that would actually be a better. Emerging from that has a higher likelihood of having a really awesome application. And so we just need one of those. We need, probably 5,000 of those to really reach tons of users and bring them all.
So, so your answer is it'll come through consumer in some way, shape, or form.
The consumer could be a business. It could be B2B.
Yeah, consumer bit. Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
but the problem we have today is that what I'm describing is like a two-sided marketplace. It takes a while for these things to form. You need both this is basically a three-sided marketplace. Like you need somebody to give their data of some form. Maybe they have a platform from it. It's his business to be able to do that, and then you need some other consumer of that data that wants to monetize it in some way. So you're talking like a three-sided marketplace. So it's when that flywheel gets going, it's going to super pop off potentially. But it just takes a while to get all those pieces in place in a user-friendly way to get them. But yeah, once they get there, they're super sticky, and there's so many. There's so much economic opportunity that we just need to find that sauce.
Not much to add there. I think that is very much exactly how I see it.
What's the entry point, though? How is this flywheel going to get started? Where it's going to come from?
I think that beams could be one way. I think
fair point.
I think it is very difficult to project exactly what the right first application will be that will bring in the masses. But fundamentally, I think it's a combination of what Matt said. It's the ability to monetize data that so far can't really be monetized, that sits in silos, that is not shared, that people can't really take advantage of. But it's also the advantage of just a very good user experience. Today, if you just look at the identity and the access part of applications, you have to go through the same process over and over and over and over again. Even if you just look at centralized exchanges and you have to create an account at every single different platform, you have to go through the same process over and over again to verify your identity. And that is a very inefficient process. There's a lot of friction here. And I think it's one thing we all probably agree on, what users love is ease of use, right? Fast, a performant way of using things. And if we can actually reduce that friction to a point where you do that identity process once and then you can portably and composably use that data across applications, that's a huge improvement in user experience. It makes it easier, it makes it faster, it makes it simpler. And on top of that then, as Matt said, there is a unique opportunity to then also monetize the data on top of that and to all of a sudden create a new monetization stream that just doesn't exist today. But I think it might actually start just with the reduction of friction in using your identity across applications and making it portable. That might be the initial trigger. And then people realize there is a lot of applications out there that it can monetize and start sharing their data with, which I think could then trigger a much bigger adoption from there onwards.
So we talk about the problem of data fragmentation. Like there's probably 30 different identity standards within Web3, and stuff that goes into Nillion is not compatible with stuff that goes into other open source identity solutions. So like, aren't we just creating more data fragmentation if we have all of these multiple competing identity standards because we can't ever get into critical mass? How do we, so we have a data fragmentation problem within our own industry now because there's so many standards. How do we get beyond that?
I think that's kind of natural when you're starting out, that there's going to be like some level of craziness. Like just think of like Blu-ray versus HD DVD. Like there's just so many. There's going to be some competing standards over time, and when you have like all these technologists, they're just going to be. I don't see that as much of a problem. The problem is there isn't the motivating end application that's really grabbed it yet. Like I think identity is going to come from some motivated example, and we just don't have that yet. I think that's the bigger issue.
Anybody else have thoughts on this?
So like,
I'm not sure if I agree.
Because I think when we talk about the flywheel, there's a lot of parties involved. Like definitely, there's the tech developers who are trying to make everything smooth, more user friendly for people. There are the data generators, data providers. So I mean, that's what we're doing. We're trying to bring more people on board. We're trying to produce more data in general. Like I think that the quantity does matter, because once you reach the critical mass, your data actually are start to be valuable, especially when talking about feeding that to AI models, etc. So like I think it's not get back to the question. It's not like fragmentation. It's just that like I think you just need a push on every participant in the ecosystem. Like they're they're competing with each other as well. Like we're going to see better user experience in some of the protocols, and then like that's gonna win out the market in the end, I think. So it's gonna condense, and then that's what every market does basically. But at this moment, we're still like competing for the more efficient solutions.
Yeah, but let me ask you, since you're at the application layer, like how do you think about leveraging these competing, privacy standards or identity standards? Are you using kind of like drawing on multiple of them to aggregate as many lives as possible, or how do you think about, because your business is consumers using something, generating data, and accessing lots of different users who can generate more data, right? The flywheel. So how do you think about like assessing the various privacy preserving technologies out there?
So that's a really good question. So we've actually been in talk with a lot of the privacy data solution protocols. Like, but for us as a consumer brand, we are very close with our community. We talk with them every day. We know what the community actually is looking for. So like by knowing our customers, we can choose the best. That integrates, we choose the best protocols that implement our goals. So that's how we do it from the bottom-up approach.
Makes sense. I don't know. I still feel like there's something here on this fragmentation I want to go a little bit deeper on. Like, is there like a pie expanding exercise that could happen around different, if you look at your competition or different decentralized protocols for allowing people to control their own data? Is there like a industry utility mechanism that could be used here where, like, your thesis here is you got to aggregate all these lives, a lot of them, people could come build stuff on top of them. Like, is there kind of like a live sharing utility where there's some interoperability standard? Is this the way this happens? Or like, how do you get to that critical mass? Because there's certain, we had people in the room here, 50% of a very small sample size said they actually cared. These people are probably more likely to care than other people. So we're probably going to start off with not that many people who actually are going to think this is a better way. We'll have to demonstrate it's a better way. So how do you get to that level of scale? One is by the poll, but is there anything we can do as an industry to get to that faster?
Maybe I'll give some thoughts and then tell me if I'm like on the right track. Like it seems to me that basically what's going to happen is app like his like really catches something. It's like not going to be a complete solution. Maybe it doesn't have all sides of the marketplace, but maybe people just like data tracking, and there's something in this app that like gives them some guidance that people really like, or there's some visualization or something. The minute that starts happening against being on chain, I would argue that it doesn't necessarily matter exactly the standard that they use as long as it's functional. It's just code. So, like, whoever wants access to that user base, whether it be 1,000, 100,000, 100 million people, that is it's just code. People can parse it and use it however they want. And the identity is just the fact that they're wearing a ring, and like obviously you can just track if it's identical between the information is so granular that it's going to be hard to spoof. So you can get like anti-Sybil just by the fact that it's like literally a cart data. That you have to wear that is generated from a wearable. You're not putting that on a monkey. Like it just would look way different than a human. So I think that's going to start being that's going to be like generate humanhood, an identity. It's not going to look like some standard where you have some JSON blob that's defined a some certain way or whatever. It's just going to be whatever he chooses. But it doesn't matter. As somebody else who thinks I can give a better insurance product if I know their heart rate data or whatever, I just know I just have to look at his API and figure it out. And ChatGPT is going to really help me do that actually. Like I think a lot of our modern technologies around are going to be able to read this stuff, and the linkages are going to be basically trivial once the data is there.
How do I combine though my Kudos identity with my Hive Mapper identity? Like, how do I begin to how does this is what I'm getting to with like a lives bank, right?
That's trivial. I think if I'm on his platform, and this is what blockchain gives you actually. It's the fact that I don't have to go to like Google and see if I can like do a single sign-on with whatever. I don't need to do any of that anymore. I sign on with his site. I sign on with whatever else. I'm the one who can define the linkage. All I have to do is sign that I'm the same person. That's what blockchain gives you.
Yeah, I think it builds on what you said. Basically, account creation and also chain abstraction, right? Where things like we see today in account abstraction, you don't necessarily have to have an account on all these different chains. In fact, you have one account, and you can sign across multiple chains at the same time. So, and this is also how we see it. Like, I think it will potentially converge to standard, potentially not converge to standard. But for us, it's about giving people access, regardless of which standard they use, and then giving them access to actually store the information, but more importantly, process the information in a privacy-preserving manner, right? So the Nillion network does not directly sit on the identity side. The Nillion network is a compute network. So it gives you access to use the data without everyone ever seeing your data, right? Your data is always encrypted. You can run arbitrary programs on top of that and store the data really securely. But from an access standpoint, we are agnostic. And likewise, blockchains should be agnostic in terms of how you want to access those systems. And ideally, they're interoperable, and ideally, they're seamlessly connected. And that's also how we see that. And I think obviously is the industry direction in terms of like we develop account abstraction, we make it as simple as possible to use different sources to create accounts, but there will also potentially be a regulatory framework at some point, right? If you look at the EU, for instance, with the digital identity scheme in 2024, et cetera, they will have a macro impact on how things evolve in the future, because obviously it will matter to a wide range of people globally.
And just explain to people a little bit here on the privacy wrapper here that you provide. Like, how does that work? Do you go at the wallet level? Do you go, is it like individual applications, or does someone opt into it? Like, how do people use the protocol?
Yeah, so I mean, today the way you create an account in a Nillion network is fundamentally via a key pair. So you essentially create an account via a public-private key pair. You have a user ID. With that user ID, you can access the network. And by being able to access that network, you can tap into all the programs that are sitting in the Nillion network, which essentially guarantee you to use those programs in a privacy-preserving manner. So that means that whenever you send data to those programs, the data that you send to the nodes to run those programs is fully encrypted. So the nodes see nothing about the underlying information, which is basically confidential computing, right? But actually cryptography-based rather than hardware-based. And you then generate an output. So the nodes generate an output, which is still hidden, it's still encrypted. And you as a party specify who can decrypt the underlying information. So it could be me, again, who provided input data. It could be another third party. It could, in fact, be a smart contract. So you could settle on a chain and then reconstruct publicly, verifiably, and immutably on a chain. But fundamentally, the benefit I get is I get trust minimized, decentralized private compute, which is very important for specifically decentralized applications. Today, dApps on chains don't have any access to real privacy. All the compute and all the storage obviously happens in the clear on chain. But it's also critical for a lot of Web2 users and enterprises, particularly when you want to share data among multiple individuals who don't want to share the data in plain text, right? That is critical for things like obviously AI, for inference, where you don't want to share your data with a single model provider. It's sensitive information, but it's also critical for what the enterprise-heavy use cases around healthcare. There are multiple patient information distributed across multiple ecosystems, but now you can bring them all together into one system without leaking anything about the underlying information and still generate new value that otherwise wouldn't be captured. So the access point at the moment is a simple user ID that's generated, but the vision here is obviously to, again, be agnostic in terms of like how you will in the future access the network, to make it as seamless and as easy as possible, regardless of which access control
So
mechanism.
primarily B2B right now.
I wouldn't say, B2B, developers are the users of the network because they
Okay.
deploy programs, but then end users utilize those applications on top of it, right? So it's like you think about blockchains, you have developers building smart contracts, and then end users are interacting with them.
And Matt, how do you think about, like, holistically, you said you manage the tech stack. How do you think about the types of privacy, initiatives that you're pursuing? How do you think about what to prioritize and kind of like, what do you think's missing also? Like, how do you think how do you prioritize and what's missing?
So I think if you're going to sync the world state, like one of the things I think about is being the lowest friction, highest utility, chain we can be, and that gives more primitives, more data. Is just we want the valuable data to be running as low as cost of hardware as possible. And so I don't think. I'm not as opinionated on there must be some solution that uses zk. I'm more like, okay, we need more ways for insert health data. There's user stories that are usually typically done it, and I think what these projects are doing are great. So I guess it really kind of goes like user story by user story and how I define what is missing, and then I also just track what is the emergent technology that satisfies what part of that case. Like you always have to go from the user, even as a platform. Like I totally agree with what he said. Like my customers are not end retail users. Like obviously retail users use Solana, but that's not my customer. My customer is businesses and developers. Like I want him to build on my platform and him bring users. Like I don't know. Yeah. So I guess I don't think there's really a short answer here. It really is kind of like figure out like what are the key things coming from like your core thesis of what you are as a platform or your app, and then work backwards from there about like what is available, what's possible, and then try to fill the gaps.
And are you seeing lots of developer demand for this type of stuff? Is this like a topic as you're talking to a developer that comes up frequently, or?
I would say that the concept comes up incredibly frequently. The current user demand is not really this exactly. But the user is going to be pretty. This is something that's really hard with product development. The user is very rarely going to give you some really in-depth view, like my inner workings of my soul and like what I want from my healthcare data. They're going to give you some very light, like, yeah, I kind of want to get healthier. That's my New Year's resolution, right? Like it's going to be something very basic, and you can kind of like work backwards from there, like the thing that they actually want. And you have to kind of like that's like one of the good product people will take that simple answer and like figure out how to deliver it. That's why it's kind of hard to answer in like a concise way.
So next question. So like, as you built your application, how have you integrated all of these different facets? You have like some AI, you have some privacy. Of course, you got to get consumers just interested generally in their healthcare data. Like, how have you thought about bringing all of these different threads together and prioritizing things?
First of all, it's tough. It's definitely tough to have so many facets in your project. But I think a lot of things actually, for example, blockchain and AI, they're naturally there's natural synergies. So how we do is that we design a few pillars in our ecosystem. Like the hardware is for the data collection, the app is for the interaction of the users with the users, and there's got to be incentives. So we create gamifications to incentivize users. But like we're also close, as I said before, we're closely paying attention to what our users exactly want, and then we're contacting, we're discussing with different data privacy solutions to see like if we can, to what extent are we able to what extent we can make the solution more suitable for our users. So like so it's tough to combine a lot of things, but like you just gotta make it work. And I think as far as we are doing right now, I think we're pretty good at doing what we're doing.
Yeah, maybe to add some thoughts from our perspective, because obviously we sit on the infra layer. We are building really new design space, right? So I think that's exciting. That's also a challenge because obviously if you build new design space, then it's not necessarily obvious how exactly it will be used, what the use cases will be, what the verticals are, what the horizontals are. But I think what we did really well is already 2.5 years ago when we started our journey, is we were extremely product focused, right? And I think that's quite unique about infra because a lot of infrastructure projects, the thesis there is let's build the tech and then people will come, right? That's a cool thesis, but it doesn't always work out that way, right? Now, of course, you cannot have all the ideas at the beginning. You will not know in advance exactly what the so-called killer use cases will be and will bring the greatest adoption. You can have ideas, you can have preferences, but ultimately you have to open up and let people build. But nonetheless, I think it's very important in crypto to have a very strong product-driven mindset, and that's what we had 2.5 years ago. We started talking to founders. How would you use this piece of technology if it existed, right? Where does it hurt that you don't have access to privacy? We talked to healthcare companies. We talked to financial service companies. We talked to a DeFi app. We talked to an identity application on chain. So a wide range of different enterprises and developers. And on that journey, we invited quite a significant chunk of those teams to get early access to our DevNet, right? So we were not public at that point. We actually still are on the testnet side, not quite yet public, but we gave people access to our internal DevNet, and that was extremely valuable because we learned what are the things people need, right? What are the functional requirements? What are the non-functional requirements? What are the product requirements that people want to integrate into their product? How would they use a decentralized private compute network? And the exciting thing is now, 2.5 years in, we have already people building in decentralized private AI. So people build federated learning in a privacy-preserving manner, where today you leak all of the information when you aggregate all the weights on the server. We see people building private retrieval augmented generation, which is a key part in the AI stack today, where you do semantic search on vectors in a privacy-preserving manner. We see people building private dog pools where you can now get away with MEV capture. The colleague before mentioned front running, mentioned sandwiching, mentioned liquidations. Now, if somebody builds an encrypted dog pool where you don't see the bits and assets come in, you can essentially get pre-trade privacy and eliminate that MEV capturing. Many other things, some of which we have thought about 2.5 years ago, but some of which we haven't thought, but have identified talking to lots of founders from the early beginning. And that's obviously what we continue to do. We have a nucleus program in place where people keep contacting us. We identify with them their synergies. We identify where our technology could be best suitable for them and help them on their journey to get the applications developed.
This is a perfect segue into the next question. So one of the main promises or benefits of blockchain is transparency. So what's the right, what's the line between what should be private and what should be public, and how do you balance these kind of like competing priorities?
Sure. I think the way you have to think about it is not the one or the other, right? So if you want to build an app today, you have a lot of data that is not sensitive. You have a lot of data where you want immutability. You have a lot of data where you need transparency. You have a lot of data where you need verifiability. And then you also have data that is very sensitive. You have data that is private, that is high value, that you don't want to share with the whole world. And on that basis, you need to make a decision, whether you use public computing networks or private computing networks, right? Today, we don't have that private computing network in a trustless manner, and that's what we're building. That's why we're so excited about what we're building. But that's how you need to think about this, right? So giving you a particular use case, so I don't know, let's say we look at the AI space and you generate some content. Well, you could have verifiable digital signatures that verify that you are the true creator of it, right? So you get provenance and authenticity. You can put that timestamp on chain, and now we have an immutable agreement globally with a shared state that this is the creator of that content. Likewise, agents probably will need a chain to pay each other. I don't think they will go to JP Morgan and will ask for an account there. They will probably pay on chain. Again, you will need public ledgers for that. But then an agent needs to tap into private data at some point, right? Because a good agent is an agent who replicates you who does things that you don't want to do yourself in a more efficient manner. And it means they need to tap into private data, they need to process private data, and you absolutely do not want to put that on chain, right? You absolutely do not want to put your heart rate data, you don't want to put your messages on a blockchain. Maybe some people do it, but I wouldn't recommend it. So they will probably then need a private compute and a private storage network. And on that basis, a developer will just need to make a choice when is sensitive, when is not sensitive, and also make a decision, a trade-off in using those different systems, right? Because of course there is a difference in cost, performance, security, and they need to determine where they sit on that spectrum.
Down the line on this one. So, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think there's definitely a spectrum here, and maybe it's some distinctions to be made where everything on a public blockchain, you can see what's there and what you can't. It's transparent what is going to happen. It's going to go into this function, whether you can see the code of that function or not. Like it's basically the life cycle is completely transparent. You may not be technical, so maybe the wallet or whatever you're interacting with would have to tell you. But what's not happening is like me just sending it to Google and them just figuring it out or whatever. And what's really cool about a lot of these privacy platforms is the data stays private the entire end to end, but I can actually maybe see the code manipulation. So if I know my data, I know exactly what's going to happen. I actually know more what's going to happen when I insert it into some of these platforms to compute out than the platform itself or the computation itself, because they're just running through code, right? And I actually know what data is being inserted, and I know exactly what code it's going to be run on. So I know the conclusion beforehand. I'm just running it through that to prove to somebody else. So I think that's the spectrum here, where you get a lot of transparency on like what exactly is going to, like the routes and all that stuff, whereas it's completely like unbeknownst to you, or even who they're selling it to you, because you don't know the rights or whatever on all these other systems. So blockchain gives you that like transparency. There's like a whole wide range of how that plays out.
And I think I just want to add one more point. So it's like it's what we do is community governance. So like the users can actually decide to what extent they want to review they want to review their data, how transparent they want the app developers or other third-party providers to access their data. So and then again, I'll talk about incentives, because I think if the users decide to share the data, the incentives are very important. Like if you are able to, it's actually the user's decision to balance between whether I want true privacy or whether I want like partial privacy but with incentives.
Makes sense. And how do you see like regulatory frameworks emerging here and impacting your business, or just impacting how the privacy space evolves generally?
Yeah, I mean, I actually think that some of the recent developments could indeed actually be beneficial. So I mean, if you look at the U.S., the Biden administration, I think, released an executive order in November talking about AI. And believe it or not, but they were actually talking about privacy-enhancing technologies in there. They were talking about how important cryptography privacy-enhancing technologies are, and specifically mentioning CK, MPC, FHE, and the likes. That's extremely exciting. I mean, I think like if there is more money flowing in, and that specifically means more money flowing into research, more money flowing into academics, more money then also flowing into venture and the startups building towards that reality, that will just give rise to a truly decentralized, trustless private compute network much faster, right? If there is a significant macro push coming from a government like that. Now, so that's, for instance, I think quite positive. Now, if you look at the EU EI Act, which I think is pretty advanced at this point, then there are also positive things in there. For instance, they talk about data origin. So foundational model providers need to think about where does the data actually come from that they use to train those models. And I think that indirectly will probably be very beneficial to think about how do we build infrastructure for data attribution, right? How do we think about not just detecting the origin of the data, how do we make sure that we can actually mutably verify that and subsequently also monetize that or enable people to monetize that. So not all is bad. I think there are some very exciting potential tendencies there coming actually from the public side and from the macro side. But then also it's our job, I think all of us as builders in this space, to prove to regulators what the incredible value it is of these systems, right? So they might not always envision that yet. And it's our job to collaborate, educate, but also push back, right, when we fundamentally disagree about the direction that regulation may go into, because we go down, because Obviously, we need to protect the core principles of what we're trying to achieve here, and what we're trying to achieve is a decentralized system that doesn't have a single point of failure, where you don't have to trust a single company or a single individual. We're trying to create trustless, permissionless global systems that everybody can access, irrespective of where they are based, irrespective of where they are born, and most importantly, also their privacy in a truly cryptography-based manner and not in a trust me bro manner, which is unfortunately what it is today.
I'm a member of Crypto ISAC, which is ISACs are basically ways of communicating with the public-private sector and across industries. So I go to Washington fairly frequently, and I talk to a decent amount of politicians. I really like the distinction you made. I think politicians are, the amount of times I hear North Korea and like whatever millions of dollars is like, I would be drunk in a stupor if I made that ever into a drinking game. So they care about that. They care about having bottlenecks where they can prevent bad actors from getting flow of funds. That's a complete distinction I really like that he made, that they care a lot about consumer protections, though, of your data and the privacy of and IP rights and all these things that blockchain and different types of cryptography provide, whether it be FHE or ZK. So they're actually pretty versed in this. They understand how those two things are much different, and how they are going to regulate them much different. They can't necessarily agree on the finer details of all that stuff, but they at least understand that distinction.
Well, I think, like, from what we know, because we have like users from everywhere, a lot of different regions around the globe. Like a lot of governments, they're just so slow in reaction. Like you gotta be very proactive in approaching them to educate them about the benefits of what the privacy of your data and the solutions of what you're able to bring. So I'm not too sure about what the government's role in that, because in a lot of regions around the globe, people, like the governments, they don't even know too much about blockchain.
Makes sense. All right, before we go to our lightning round, let's just take it out a little bit. More of a fun thing for the audience. Like, what are you going to be your main takeaways from this ECC? What are your top 2 or 3 main takeaways? Whoever wants to go first. Yeah.
A lot of exciting stuff, actually. It's tough to choose, but one thing that I personally am very excited about, one thing that I strongly believe in myself, is we need to make life easier for people to interact with those systems. That's not news, right? We know that for a while, but there's actually some exciting development, I think, there. Thinking of things like chain abstraction. A user ideally doesn't know that they even use blockchain, right? And certainly not which blockchains they use. And things like making it easy so that you don't need to have accounts in all these different ecosystems, but instead you can keep it simple is a key step in that direction. Also, how you interact with those systems. So actually, ideas around how you can abstract away the how towards the what direction of intents, for instance, is interesting, right? Early days there, but today you need to be pretty technical, or at least well versed, to even like think about going for all these steps to actually get stuff done on chain. If all you need to do is provide an intent, and then the rest is figured out by other parties, that's an interesting concept to explore of how we can abstract away complexity further. So I think that is exciting. On the AI crypto intersection, some of it makes sense, some of it doesn't make sense. Let's put it that way. What does make sense, in my opinion, very much is thinking about verifiability, thinking about provenance, thinking about self-sovereign data ownership, and how we can make sure that if those foundation models are trained with our data in the future, how can we actually attribute back capital to the originators of the data, and also how can we introduce, and this is obviously our mission, privacy-enhancing technologies to run those models, to train those models without anything being leaked in the process. And there's some extremely exciting development on a macro scale, but also on our end. Our cryptographer today published or presented an incredibly exciting paper that will push the state of the art forward in that space. So that gets us obviously very excited. And last but not least, on the very high level, what gets me excited as well is that a lot of people here that I've met over the last couple of days are extremely excited in collaborating. It's a very basic thing, but at the end of the day, if we don't come together, if we don't work together, if we don't support each other, then we're not gonna go anywhere, right? Crypto is a very tribal place. and people like to go against each other, and there are reasons why that is the case. But at the end of the day, if this industry ever wants to grow to mass adoption, ever wants to grow to a point where people out there, 2 streets further down the line, also use crypto, then we have to come together, right? And all of us build different parts of the stack, and the way to win is if we come together, integrate our stacks together, and push the space forward.
Yeah, I like a lot of that. I think, especially in the chain abstraction, I think people just kind of assume that as Solana, like some sort of non-consensus bet that we wouldn't like, we want to be branded or something. It's actually completely the opposite. We want to just, users and have things with high utility, low friction, high liquidity, all that stuff. So we don't pay for sponsorships or branded whatever logos or anything like that. And I think the thing I'm taking away personally from this is a lot of this. People are very interested in our architecture. They understand that there is a very just proof is in the pudding that there's a lot of benefits to a lot of the things that we've done technically, and so I'm in a lot of deeper talks with people who are trying to figure out how to apply it to their protocols, or just ship on Solana, or at least have some sort of collaborative nature with Solana, whether it's through chain abstraction or some other layer. So I think it's really encouraging, because frankly, like in years past, that was definitely not it was like, ooh, you're not decentralized enough. It was like basically as far as I would get. So like I don't know. I think it's a very positive development, because it's basically a recognition that we need to think about like how to get consumers and how to get customers, and whether that be businesses or whatever it is, we need to think about that first, as opposed to some I don't know, architecture religion.
I just want to say it's not only in Brussels, but also like in all physical meetups or physical events. I think it strengthens our idea about the physicals. Like the physicals are important, whether the meetups or the physical product, they're important, especially when approaching newcomers, when approaching to normal people. Like these are the type of things that actually bring people into the ecosystem. So like that's why we try to be at every local event. We're releasing physical wearable product for people. I think that that if that should be like the biggest concept that we've been having throughout the year. But like the second thing, I think, even though like I'm not paying too much, I no longer pay too much attention on the market condition. So like I don't think a lot of people here actually pays too much attention on market, because market is not doing well for the past month. But like there's still a lot of vibes, a lot of interesting stuff going on. So like people are getting past that, getting past that environment where they still take too much focus, put too much focus on the market condition. Rather, like people are really started to build stuff, or started to come back their ideas. So that's something I like.
Oh, yeah, we're here to stay, that's for sure. All right, lightning round. Okay, when we're on this panel next year at ECC, in 5 words or less, when people look back on what happened between the next ECC and this ECC in regards to privacy, what will they say? Okay, 5 words or less. What will be the things that people will talk about? Or what's the tagline? All right, so I'm going to give 5. We're going to start here. 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
People store. 5 is going to be tough.
5 or less.
People store private data decentralized.
All right, you got 7. That's okay.
I can do payroll now.
Woo!
There is value.
All right. Well, I want to thank all of you. Hope this was fun. I had fun. And let's keep rocking.